Notice also that if there is too much money in circulation, as indicated by rising prices, the only way to remove excess money is to make the loans scarce. Eventually, as the loans are paid back, the money supply will be reduced, but the nation will starve and businesses will go bankrupt in the process. They need loans to pay interest, pay employees, and conduct business. And when businesses fail, people lose their jobs and lose their homes. Now let's look at a properly designed fiat money system. But before we do, notice that it is not fiat money, but debt money that is responsible for the problems. Whether you use gold or paper currency in Figure 1, you will have the same problem with unpayable debt. When debt money is the problem, gold is not the solution, though it will make you feel better. In Figure 2, we have a balanced, stable money system. As seen in the big block on the left, instead of the private banks creating the money for their own profit, the Federal Reserve has been abolished or nationalized, and money creation is now under the control of the U.S. Treasury. The banks may do investment banking, but must no longer practice usury. All loans to the nation are by Treasury banks. Money is put into circulation by loans as before, but also by expenditures for public projects, as shown in red. Government should simply create the money and spend it into circulation. The remarkable thing about this is that the media and others complain that this is what government is doing now, simply running the printing press. It is true that the Treasury does the printing, but the paper money is sold to the Federal Reserve at the cost of printing, and then the government borrows it from the Fed. Money is removed from circulation by repayment of loans plus interest. Interest on the loans benefits the nation, not the private bankers. Whereas usury is generally an evil, in this case it is a benefit because it reduces the tax burden on the population. Fees, duties, tolls, excises, and fines round out the money destruction process. Taxes are only used if necessary. Prior to 1900, generally all needful federal revenue was acquired from import duties, so it is possible to have no income taxes. Another way to look at it, just like a water tank, to maintain a constant level, most money spent into circulation must be removed from circulation. Some excess money can be left in circulation to accommodate growth, savings, and provide a permanent money supply. Loans could be repaid on the basis of a percentage of productivity, not on time. So if the economy goes bad due to war or natural disaster, payments are reduced or cease, reducing the possibility of foreclosures. This system is capable of producing unbridled prosperity because it is not based on the scarcity of gold and can provide as much money as needed by society based on demand, but no more as set by law. In a gold-based system, if the water tank gets too low and you are out of gold, there is no way to increase it. A gold-based system is like the early Volkswagen car. Pedal to the metal, you can only pick up speed so fast, and you can't do much damage. It is a low-performance system by desire and design, and prevents the monetary authority from creating too much money. This is a valuable feature in a lawless, corrupt government. A fiat currency is like a high-performance race car. You cannot allow it to get out of control or you can do real damage. Your law must be sufficiently vital to maintain its regulation. An important feature of this design is that money supply control is independent of loan availability. If there is too much money in circulation, as indicated by rising prices, it can be reduced without throttling loans to the nation. Simply reduce expenditures, and loan repayment and other methods will reduce the money supply. The nation will have access to low-interest loans, perhaps 3% or less, at all times, without regard to the quantity of money in circulation. The new money loaned to businesses will soon enough be converted into products and services, maintaining the balance between money and the goods and services the money chases. Banks do not make loans. This is reserved to government. Whatever argument one may make that government should not compete with business, this does not apply to banking. This is the one business that government needs to be in order to prevent plunder of society. How does the debt money system produce plunder and war? It is self-evident that if you borrow $100 into circulation and must pay back an additional $10 in interest that does not exist, this mathematical impossibility is a fraud that will force exponential debt expansion, bankruptcies, and is tantamount to plunder. Some will argue that you can't trust government and political control with something so important as money, that private ownership will more likely secure stability and honesty. Putting trust aside, the properties are different. Interest paid to private banks is compounded until the bankers own everything. Interest to treasury banks is destroyed. There is no compounding, no increase in debt, and less or no income taxes. On the question of trust, would you rather trust a banker for a $50,000 mortgage and pay $150,000 in interest over 30 years? Or pay a treasury bank $10,000 in administration fees for the same $50,000 loan? Would you rather the nation pay for the money supply with several hundred billion of annual interest to the bankers, which they use to buy Congress, or pay nothing to the Treasury? Who would you trust more to keep us out of war? Banks who profit when government borrows money for weapons, or the Treasury, which does not profit from war? The bankers took over this country when the Federal Reserve Act was passed in December of 1913. In less than a year, July of 1914, we were in World War I. It should be clear that the current system doesn't work and it needs to be changed. Many of the monetary gurus want to go to a gold-backed system, so now I want to address backing. Backing is something of generally accepted value that the monetary authority will pay you on demand for your paper currency. Backing has two purposes. First, it is one method to give value to fiat currency. And second, it places a limit on how much currency the monetary authority can issue, regardless of community need. Some believe gold is necessary to maintain a stable currency, and argue that every fiat currency eventually failed. Neither are true. Perhaps every debt money currency failed because debt money is inherently unstable, mathematically untenable, and will plunder society. Later we'll examine successful fiat currencies. Backing is of benefit in a lawless society because it prevents the monetary authority from creating too much money, thereby reducing the value of the currency, but it also prevents expanding the money supply as needed, interest-free, to fuel the economy. To unconditionally back a fiat currency with gold, for every dollar's worth of paper currency created, you need $1 of gold, or whatever you use as your backing. A backed currency is far more expensive than an unbacked currency. $1 million of currency would require $1 million of gold to back it. A fractional reserve currency provides only a fraction of backing. If $100 of currency is backed by $10 worth of backing, that is 10% reserves. Due to the inflexible nature of a gold-backed system, the need for money will force the reserve requirement to drop until it is unbacked. Redemption of a fractional reserve currency cannot be guaranteed. You cannot use $10 of backing to pay $100 worth of currency. You are open to a run on the banks, and you can bank on it happening. This is not a design for the new age, so find a better solution. Gold is not the issue. Law is the issue. Gold creates a natural limit to how much money can be created. That is why we want it. Its limited quantity restrains government's insatiable thirst for money. Gold backing will give stability, but not unbridled prosperity, because it prevents creating as much money as the society needs. If more is needed, too bad. Prosperity cannot come from scarcity. A lawless government will not be restrained by gold and will find a way around its limitations. And when usury and unpayable debt is the problem, gold is not the solution. You must abolish the debt money system first. If you argue that fiat money opens the door to abuse, I would argue it opens the door to unbridled prosperity. Prevention of abuse depends on law. You can give fiat currency value by simply accepting it in payment of taxes. It is not necessary to back it with a commodity. Now let's look at some examples of successful fiat currencies. After the Napoleonic Wars ended in 1815, Britain put inflation in check by introducing the gold standard, but this created severe austerity. On the island of Guernsey, labor and materials were abundant, but much-needed projects could not be funded for want of cash, and existing borrowing costs were consuming 80% of the island's revenues. The Guernsey government issued its own debt-free fiat currency. New roads, sea defenses, and public buildings were established, fostering widespread trade and prosperity. Full employment was achieved, no deficits resulted, and prices were stable, all without a penny paid in interest. This experiment was apparently cut short by the private banks who were cut out of the equation. In the small Bavarian town of Schwanenkirchen, during the Great Depression, money was in short supply. Its only industry was a coal mine, which had been closed for 2 years because of the Depression. The village had barely existed by means of the government dole, and almost everyone was in debt. The coal mine owner issued a currency called the wara, bringing the village back to prosperity. Workers and merchants were free from debts, and a new spirit of freedom and life pervaded the town. Acceptance of wara spread to various parts of Germany. About 2,000 shops and 1 or 2 entire communities were covered by means of it, but in November of 1931, the German government passed a law ending the circulation of wara, and Schwanenkirchen went back on the dole. Another example occurred in 1932 during the Great Depression in Würgl, Austria, a small town of 4,000 which was in debt. Unemployment had risen to 30%, and local construction and civic maintenance was halted. Würgl introduced a local currency that carried out public works projects involving construction and repair of roads, bridges, tanks, drainage systems, factories, and buildings, and was accepted for payment of local taxes. In the 1 year that the currency was in circulation, city revenue rose almost 10 times, the heavy arrears in local tax collection declined dramatically, and unemployment was eliminated while it remained very high throughout the rest of the country without any increase in prices. Due to its dramatic success, the program met stiff opposition by the central bank, resulting in its suspension. Unemployment rose, and the economy degenerated to the same levels of other communities. In conclusion, if a fiat currency was mathematically untenable, there would have been no benefits from its use. The bankers are trying to keep you in ignorance. I'm glad to report that Congressman Kucinich of Ohio has proposed a landmark reform of monetary policy, generally in accord with the position of this video, except it allows usury, called the National Emergency Employment Defense Act of 2010, H.R. 6550.